Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of several children's books, no other than Miss Jane Sharp. Welcome to Book
Hello.
101, Miss Jane. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. And I don't know, I've written quite a few children's books and I really enjoy it. As my children got older, I had more free time and I sort of just dove in head first.
Yes, yes, yes. And Miss Jane Sharp, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. Most especially children's books, because this is our generations to come. So, what age group are you targeting with your children's book?
Well, my alphabet books, the themed alphabet books I've made, I think are really good for anyone that wants to sit on their mom's lap and look at pictures with them. So I think at least 2 years old. And I know my son is a little biased, but he sort of outgrew them when he was about 9. So I think any child that enjoys to cuddle with mom would like my books.
Definitely. So, how do you ensure the language and themes are appropriate for young readers?
Some of the feedback I've gotten is that the language I've chosen is too advanced for the young readers. But I think because my books are written specifically for small niches, small groups of the population, these words are actually normal words for their families. They might be advanced for kids that don't live in this lifestyle already. For instance, the Crunchy Mom books, the words might be foreign even to some adults, but to a family that's living this crunchy lifestyle, they are just everyday words they use all the time.
What kinds of stories or characters resonate most with children?
Well, my newest book is my first book that actually has characters and a plot. My previous books have been themed alphabet books, which just have an overarching theme and a bunch of friendly pictures on that theme. But my newest book is called Winston the Cat in a Mech Suit. And I think that it's really resounding with children because the pictures are super detailed and they can find new things in each page every time they look at it. And they like following this cat on his adventures with his sci-fi suit that he hops into. So I think that they're just so surprised by a cat with a mech suit that they just can't stop looking at it.
What is the core message or lesson you want to convey in your children's book?
Well, with Winston, I think a lot of people think that a cat is very self-centered and only thinks about itself. But I think in my book, Winston, he's a big part of the team and he is very loyal to his family and he put aside what he wants to do sometimes to help the family with their goals. And so I think that that's a really good lesson for kids because they're always so busy and wrapped up in what they're enjoying, but it helps them remember, they need to be like the cat and they need to help the family when the family, has stuff to get done.
How do you decide on the setting and tone of your story?
I absolutely love my own home. I've worked very hard to make it really comfortable and interesting. And so when I worked with my artist to create the book, she used photos and suggestions and a color scheme that was just like my own home. So actually, when you're reading about Winston and you're watching his family in action, it's actually based on my own home. And I've had nothing but good feedback about how interesting and welcoming it is.
How do you decide on setting and tone of your story?
I think that it's playful would be the overarching tone. I think it's just a silly premise altogether that a cat would have a science fiction kind of suit that he runs with little, you know, mechanical levers and arms. And I think it's just silly. And I think kids really respond to that, that they're silly and the book is silly and it surprises them. And I think that they just they're in a silly phase of life, and so they really like it.
What techniques can you use to keep the story engaging and relatable for children?
I think that so the way that Winston, the cat with the mech suit, is laid out on the left-hand page, there's normal life. There's a cat who is, giving himself like a fur bath, or he's napping in a basket of laundry. And then every right-hand side page is this imaginative world where the cat is in his science fiction suit and he's fixing the problems that his bath or his nap led to. And so every time you turn the page, you get this little window of what's really happening in the world, and then this big full color page about this imaginative world that the children and the cat are living in. And so every time you turn the page, it's a new surprise about what is happening now.
Very well said, Miss Jane. Very well said. So, how did you create a relatable and memorable character for children?
So before my family had a pet cat, I would definitely have not related as thoroughly to the cat. But after we had had some pet cats and we realized, in our family, if the cat is sleeping on you or the cat is sleeping on, your laundry or your book, you don't wake up the cat. And so I think anybody who has a cat in their family really relates to that because, when that cat is sleeping, he's the cutest thing, and it doesn't matter how badly you need to fold that laundry, you're not going to wake up the cat. And so dog lovers might not understand, but the people out there who live with a cat, they are absolutely going to understand.
For sure. For sure. So, what role do diversity and inclusivity play in your story?
Well, Winston is in a family that isn't very diverse, but it is a cat living with a bunch of humans, and his loyalty lies with the humans who are a completely different species. But I did want to say that in my themed alphabet books, I have worked extremely hard to make sure that have the characters in them are very diverse and cover a huge range of abilities and their appearances and their interests. So I think all my themed alphabet books are extremely diverse.
So, how can you balance fun and educational elements in your book?
Well, each of my themed alphabet books are, like I said, they're covering a theme together. There's 26 or more nouns and verbs covering that theme from A all the way down to Z. But then each book, to be more in depth and educational and interactive, I've made an activity book that matches each one. So, for instance, I have a book called Kitchen Helper ABC, and it's about families that just buy ingredients and the kids are helping in the kitchen. And the accompanying activity book is super educational. It teaches how to cut vegetables safely, how to make sure your kitchen is ready to extinguish any fires that may start. Talks about all sorts of things, different kinds of salts, and it's actually the activity books are extremely educational when they're paired with the alphabet books.
What are the key considerations for working with illustrators for a children's book?
I have worked, I think maybe with 6 different illustrators, and been it has been fabulous. I illustrated the first 2 books that I wrote, and it was fun, and I learned a lot, and I'm pleased with them. But I realized that that's not my like high and shining skill set. And so I started to work with illustrators and I have found it to be magnificent. I have a vision in my mind of what I want the page to look like. And I'm able to convey that really clearly with probably too many helpful hints and little sketches and maybe screenshots of things that look similar and really give them the vision for what I need, and they have been fabulous to just make these ideas come to life. I just cannot recommend working with the illustrators more. It has been a joy to work with the different women and men that I have worked with.
How can illustrations enhance the storytelling experience for young readers?
Well, when you have a young reader who is the first step of reading a book with your parent is learning, that the pages go from left to right. It's learning that each page is telling a little piece of a story. And before you can read, before you know the words and the letters and the sounds, the story should be able to come to that child with just the images. And so if you look at my books, I don't have big cartoony kinds of characters. I have pretty realistic, detailed images. And I think that kids get sucked into looking for those tiny details and they appreciate their realism, but they're still approachable and colorful and cheerful. But it's not something you can just flip, flip, flip and you're done. I really wanted the kids to be able to get lost in the images and have some realism and some depth to them so that the illustrations, if you can't read, the illustrations will tell you a story, even if nobody is there reading over with the words also.
What colors, styles, or visual cues are most appealing to children?
Well, I think science shows that very young children like anything that is high contrast, but I think the older a child gets, the images really need to be interesting enough to grab their attention. If it's a simple line drawing, in its simplicity, you're looking like, wow, how can I see a horse in this just splash of watercolor lines? But then when you have an extremely detailed drawing, that's pulling them in. So I think there's really not a gateway for what kind of art is best, but I think that we shouldn't underestimate kids' abilities or desires to like be entertained and to really investigate the pictures. I don't think the pictures, aside from like a very, very, very young child that might just enjoy black and white, like, contrasting shapes, I don't think we should underestimate their interest in looking at a really fabulous image.
How do you simplify complex ideas to make them understandable for children?
Ooh, that's very difficult when, like I said, my first few books were themed alphabets. So I had to choose words that the kids would already know in their lifestyle, that their parents would know, that might be things just in their home. So in my images, I would cut out anything extra that wasn't absolutely intrinsic to the picture. And then with the Winston books, I would make sure that the colors were really bright and that they weren't, like I go back again and again, that they should be pretty detailed so that kids can find new things every time they look at it.
So, Miss Jane, what techniques did you use to make a story rhythmical or lyrical?
The one of my alphabet books ends with a poem, but I think in Winston, the cat with the mech suit, there isn't so much rhyming or meter as much as there is the balance of, as I said earlier, there's the left page is a small image of reality, and the right page is a huge picture of the imaginative world. And I think that back and forth between, the small image of reality and then the hugely expansive imagination photo, I think that in itself is its own kind of rhythm because the child expects every time they turn the page, they know what to expect on the left page and the right page. And although it doesn't rhyme or anything, it's definitely a rhythm that they can look forward to.
How can you use repetition of rhyming to engage young readers?
I think kids love rhyming because they can fill in the answer before the answer comes. When I read a rhyming book to my nephew or my children when they were younger, after the first few pages, the first few rhymes, I would pause and I would see if they could fill it in. And that anticipation is half the fun of a rhyming book, I think.
So, Miss Jane, how can you gather feedback from children during the development of your book?
Well, Amazon, I've printed through Amazon and they allow you to print an early copy. And so I would take that early copy to my friends' houses and I would read it to their children. I would share it with kids that I know. Since we're still homeschooling, we go to the park every Friday and I can find all sorts of willing audience there. And if the kids seem bored, if they don't seem interested, then I know I have to keep working. But if they want to look at it after I'm finished, I know that it's a winner because they can't get enough. So that feedback from the community is has been really helpful.
Very well said and good technique, Miss Jane. And what role do parents, teachers, or librarians play in shaping your story?
I mean, my favorite teacher in grade school was the librarian. I was in a self-publishing club even in fourth and fifth grade, and there was no greater joy for me than going to the library every week and seeing my tiny, silly little book on the shelf in the library. The librarian was, I mean, their gift is to find fabulous books for each little young reader that they would enjoy, that would suck them in and make them enjoy reading. And I think a parent's job is to find topics that the kids would enjoy and then sit down. There's no age that's too old to stop reading to your children. I think reading out loud to your children at first, of course, just picture books, but then later, even when they can read on their own, chapter books, it's so important to continue reading to kids well after they are able to read on their own. And I think parents are laying that groundwork, and then librarians are just helping them continue to find fabulous, material as they get older and are out, necessarily in school and things away from their parents a little more.
So, Miss Jane, what is your advice for those people out there want to write or produce children's book?
I think that you should just do it. If you have it in your heart, an image or a plot or a character, and you've always thought, "Oh, I should do this one day," I think you should take the time and do it because it is so satisfying to if you give it to someone and they enjoy it, if they find you and they enjoy it. It's important to not just be consumers nowadays, but also to produce things. And so I think that if you are a writer or an illustrator and you have an idea, that you should do what you can to make that a reality because it's so satisfying for you, but it also is important to produce things and create beautiful things in the world and not just consume.
Yes. So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing children's books?
So I am in about 5 or 6 thousand words right now of my first fictional children's chapter book. It's about a girl that's growing up in the 80s, and I'm working very hard to make it set very specifically in about 1984, 85. And I think it's going to be a really great historical look at about a 10-year-old girl growing up in the 80s. And I'm really excited. That's what I'm working on right now. Hopefully, it'll be ready sometime next year. And that's a big change for me because my other books have been illustrated, and this will be a chapter book.
Looking forward for that book, Miss Jane, and you are most welcome to come back and promote here on Book 101 Review. So, to sum up our discussion, how do you market a children's book to parents, schools, and libraries effectively?
Well, that's what I am learning now. I have written my first book, I finished about 4 years ago, and there's a lot of learning to do just for the writing and illustrating process to make sure you have a high quality product. And now I'm learning to fine tune and increase my reach and my marketing. So, things I have done besides tell everyone I know in real life, of course, I've started different social media profiles including Pinterest and making, beautiful, clear images to convey what the book is about when somebody finds an image online. I have my website. I've been trying to expand more into podcasts like yours because I know that your listeners have a relationship with you and trust you. So when, you know, podcasters are willing to share something with their audience, I think there's a lot of trust there. And so it's been a real exciting new development to get on more podcasts and share with my books more often to a wider audience.
Well, Miss Jane, good luck for your goals and looking forward again for this coming empowering book for children. So, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
I mean, I would absolutely love anybody to come to janesharp.com and they can find everything that I'm up to there.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Jane Sharp because if you support her, as I said, more empowering books for children to come. So, Miss Jane, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon. So, Miss Jane, as I said,